I am having a very fun time in both building these labs and walking through them with you as we get better and better at the command line and getting more comfortable using the Cisco router and configuring the routers and switches. So in this lab and video, what we're going to do is this. We're going to finish off our 3 interfaces on our 1, 2, and 3 respectively over that Ethernet cloud, the Metro Ethernet, and we're going to solve a problem that is such a bummer. And that's if we do a ping and then we do a typo and it thinks, oh, that may be a name, and it tries to resolve it, the name to an IP address, when it isn't really a name to begin with, it's just a typo. That DNS resolution, such a pain because we have to wait for it to time out. So in this nugget, we're also going to take a look at disabling, in the hands-on lab, disabling DNS lookups by our Cisco routers. Let's take a look at the topology, and then we'll go right to work. All right, so here's our topology that we've been building and working on so far. And what we're going to do is we're going to configure this interface, 2/0 on R1. We're going to configure this interface on R2, the 0, 0 interface, and the 0, 0 interface on R3. And the IP addresses that we're going to put on each of those routers are listed right here. I bolded them out. So gig 20 on R1 is there, gig 0, 0 on R2, and gig 0, 0 on R3. So we're going to configure each of those 3 interfaces, make sure we bring them up, and as a test, we should be able to ping between R1, R2, and R3 using those addresses here on the 172.16 network. So there's the addresses. On each of the routers, while we're there, let's go ahead and also prevent the use of DNS with the no IP domain-lookup command on each one of them. So that's our game plan, and here's what we can do. If you're logged on to the CBT Nuggets website, click on the link for the virtual lab, and then accomplish those tasks. 3 IP addresses, make sure you don't forget the no shutdown to bring up the interfaces, and disable the DNS lookups. And what I'll do is I'll put some music on for a few seconds here so you can pause it, do the work, and then when you're ready, we can go ahead and do a walkthrough together by you simply clicking on resume. Enjoy the lab. And here on R1, a great practice before we start adding any new IP addresses is to verify what's in place. Let's do a show IP interface brief. And there's the one IP address that we assigned earlier. And the interface that we want to tackle here on R1 is its interface gig 2/0. This one right here. So we'll go into configuration mode, interface gig 2/0. We'll do a no shutdown to bring it up, and then an IP address of 172.16.0.1 with a mask of 255.255.255.0 and press enter. Then we'll get out and we'll do a show IP interface brief just to make sure that what we thought we configured is there. So there's interface gig 20. It's got the IP address we assigned and it is up. Fantastic. So also, I almost forgot, while we're here, let's disable DNS lookups on R1. So we'll go back into configuration mode and we'll use the command no IP domain-lookup. And now DNS lookups are no longer going to be performed by this router. Fantastic. And to test that, we do a ping to ABC, press enter. And instead of timing out, trying to resolve ABC to an IP address, it just gave up immediately, which is because it's not doing DNS resolution. Fantastic. Let's go to R2. Now here on router 2, what do we want to do before we start configuring anything on this device? And if you're saying, well, Keith, you mentioned a moment ago, it'd be a great idea to do a show IP interface brief just to see what we have. And let me share with you one fantastic reason why it's important to do that before we start configuring. What if accidentally we're on the wrong device, the wrong router or switch, we start implementing a configuration, but we're on the wrong device? It's not fun to clean that up afterwards, and it can cause major problems in a production network. So by doing a couple quick show commands just to verify, oh yeah, we are on the right device, that's helpful so we don't make huge catastrophic mistakes. So take that one from the history books of Keith Barker. So here in router 2, let's do a show IP interface brief, verify we're on the right device, and we'll bring up interface 00 and we'll add its IP address of 172.16.0.2 with a 24-bit mask, or 255.255.255.0. So here on R2, we'll do a show IP interface brief. And sure enough, there's the IP address that we previously assigned on gig 1/0. So let's go into configuration mode and an interface gig and take a look at our topology just to be sure. We want to configure this one right here, gig 00. So we'll go into interface configuration mode for interface gig 0/0. We'll do a no shut, and then we'll give it an IP address 172.16.0.2 with that 24-bit mask or that 255.255.255.0 mask. And we're done. And the benefit of having logging synchronous is that if we bring up the interface first and then we put the IP address, either way it's going to repaint the line so we can continue working and see exactly what we're doing. So we'll exit out of interface config, go back to global config, and we'll do the no IP domain lookup. And also, take a look at this. If we do a question mark right here, we have domain, and we can do a space and a lookup, or we could do domain dash lookup. One of those is the older command. And so the no IP domain space lookup is an older way of doing the command, but actually what's put in the configuration has the hyphen. So I'm just going to add the most current flavor, which is no IP domain dash lookup, and press enter, and do an end. And then we'll verify it as well. Show IP interface brief. Show IP interface brief. Perfect. And there's our gig 00 interface at 172.16.0.2, and it is up. Let's go ahead and configure R3. So here on R3, we'll do a show IP interface brief. There's its gig 1/0 interface. Just as a reminder where that is, it is this interface right here facing the Florida network. What we want to do is add the 172 IP address to the 00 interface. So we'll go into configuration mode, interface gig 0/0, no shutdown, and then we'll add the IP address of 172.16.0.3 with the mask dated in the table. Then we'll type in exit, and then a no IP domain dash L. And if I do the L right here, it won't tab out because there's two options here, domain list or domain lookup. So if I put an O, that makes it unique, and that would be enough for it to recognize what I wanted to convey. All right, so now that that's done, we'll do a show IP interface brief. And survey says we've got gig 00 at 10.16.0.3. So for verifying this, here's what we could do. We should be able to, on this network right here, we should be able to, from R1, R2, or R3, ping any of the others' addresses. 172.16.0.1, 172.16.0.2, or 172.16.0.3 respectively. So let's test that. So here on router 3, we'll do a ping 172.16.0.1, which is R1. Looks great. We'll do that a couple times just to make sure the ARP cache is all filled in good enough. And let's hit the up arrow key and go and ping .2, which is R2. And we'll do it a second time just to verify we get 5 out of 5. And then we can ping ourselves, but that traffic is not going out on the network. When you ping yourself, it just responds locally, so there's no real network traffic, but it should all work. So now that we've disabled DNS lookups at the CLI for router 1, 2, and 3, and we've configured the IP addresses across the Metro Ethernet link for those 3 routers, I've got a question for you about what should or should not work from a ping perspective. Let's go back to the topology. So as we've gone through these labs, we have at least 4 networks that we've configured. You might say, Keith, what do you mean 4 networks? Well, we have this network in Arizona that we configured for our base config, and then we used the 192.168.1 address space, that network address space. And I will circle those in pink up here. Then we just configured another network right here across the Metro Ethernet network, and that used 172.16, and I'll circle those in red. So that's 2 different networks from an IP perspective. We also configured in a previous lab as part of the skill, we also configured a network here on the router 2 gig 1/0 interface, and I'll put that in gray. That was the 192.168.2 network. And we also configured an interface off of R3. It's 1/0, which is the 192.168.3 network. And I'll circle that right here in blue. And from a verification perspective, here's what should work. A device like router 1 that's directly connected to this network in Arizona and also the Metro Ethernet network should be able to ping and get responses from any other device in those same networks. And router 2 should be able to ping any devices that it's directly connected to, over here on the Metro side, over here on the Nevada local side. But what these routers cannot do is they cannot yet, without some training, they cannot reach or forward packets to networks that they are not directly connected to. So from R2, if we were going to try to ping an IP address up here and 192.168.1, that would fail. And that's because this router doesn't yet have any information on how to forward packets to get to that remote network of 192.168.1. And here's the great news. I've got a bunch of training lined up for us where I will specifically walk you through the steps of how a router learns about remote networks and how to forward to them so it can do its job, which is it wants to be a router and it needs to know how to forward packets to those networks if it wants to be a good and effective router. So we'll cover all that and more as we progress through our journey together. And I've got a question for you. Are you up for one more lab? Because if you are, I've got one more I'd like to prepare and share with you that gives you the opportunity to reinforce the skills we've learned up to this point and then take them to the next level. So if that's the case, I'll see you in the very next video and hands-on lab. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.